Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I hope you slept well. We are ready for our Archive Treasures General Session. This is a webinar, while your next session will be a meeting room and you'll see each other and hear each other. Again, welcome to Archive Treasures, and our opening code for ACVREP is Helen. H-E-L-E-N. Our opening code is Helen. I'm going to let everyone roll in. We have a little bit of a surprise for everyone that joins us, so I'm going to wait a minute and let everyone else get in. Good morning. We are so happy to have you here for the first general session called Archive Treasures. Good morning, Minnesota. We are so happy to have you with us today. You are welcome to type in the chat, and at the end, you are welcome to ask Mike questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat as you're thinking of them, and we'll kind of gather them together. Good morning, Washington. Oh, really early morning for you in New Mexico. Oh, aloha, Hawaii. Good morning, good morning. I hope you have a cup of joe with you. Colorado and Missouri. Good morning, everyone. We are so happy to have you here for our Archive Treasures General Session. Good morning, California. It's early for you too. Our opening code is Helen, H-E-L-E-N. Good morning, South Carolina. So happy to have you with us today. Hi, Brian. I'm glad the coffee is on. Okay. We have a good chunk of you in here today, and so I am going to start with our beginning. Oh, well, we'll try to start with our beginning. Hang on. There we go. It disappeared again. I've lost my Zoom. Yeah, I think
Mike, they're already asking you about Braille dust, so we can just chuckle about that. Where can I buy Braille dust, and will it be in the catalog?
Okay, guys, here we go. Oh, nope. See, I've got to wake up in the morning. I have to share my sound, or you would not hear this beautiful thing. Here we go.
Hi to all the annual meeting attendees. My name is Paul Ferrara. I'm the Communications Accessibility Editor here at APH. I'm standing outside the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, home of the Louisville Slugger baseball bat. You may have heard of it, maybe from that one Carrie Underwood song. How does that go? Took a Louisville Slugger to both headlights. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I got a little distracted. Anyway, there's some really cool stuff out here in Museum Row. We've got the Fraser History Museum, Louisville Science Center, the KMAC Contemporary Art Museum, and the Muhammad Ali Center. And there's something else really cool out here too, and I just can't remember what it was. Oh, that's right. It's that 120-foot tall baseball bat. It's a replica of the one Babe Ruth used to use. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, it's time for me to go, so I'll see you later. I know the rest of the APH team, they'll knock this tour out of the park.
All right, low-flying birds or something. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Craig Metter, President of the American Printing House for the Blind, and welcome to annual meeting. Not the annual meeting you had hoped for, but our first ever virtual annual meeting. The world has thrown us a curveball, and we're making the best of it by providing this connection to you virtually. I'm outside Fall City Brewery right now, and if you remember, a couple years ago, they produced our 160th anniversary American Braille Ale, a great partnership. And we value partnerships at APH. We value your partnership. One of our favorite parts of annual meeting is beyond the meeting itself is actually spending time with all of you, whether that's just chatting in the hallway, grabbing a cup of coffee, or sharing a meal. So our hope is next year the world will be a happier, better place. We'll be able to regather here in Louisville and maybe come to a place like this. So you come, you bring your ideas, you bring the communication, I'll bring the beer. We'll see you all then.
Hi, I'm Laura Huff. I'm the Executive Assistant at American Printing House for the Blind. I'm standing about 52 feet over the Ohio River on the Big Four Bridge, which is one of my favorite Louisville hotspots. It connects the charming Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is my home city, to Louisville's Waterfront Park. This bridge has a very rich history. It was originally built as a railroad truss bridge in 1895, which is more than 35 years after APH was founded. It spans about a half a mile over the majestic Ohio River, and it's actually about a full mile in length, including both approach ramps. It was renovated in 2014 and is now a bridge for pedestrians and cyclists to enjoy year-round, and it includes a beautiful view of Louisville's skyline. Well, I gotta go get my steps in, and I hope to see you sometime here in Louisville on the Big Four Bridge. I'll see you later.
Hi, I'm Justine Taylor. I'm the Low Vision Project Leader at APH. Today, I'm enjoying one of my favorite places. I'm at Cherokee Park. We have many beautiful park systems in Louisville. We have 17 parks and squares, many connected by tree-lined parkways. Cherokee Park is a great place to escape and get into nature. Deb and I love to take walks and enjoy the many walking paths here. It was great talking with you all. Enjoy the rest of your annual meeting.
Hey, I'm Laura Zier, the Independent Living Project Leader at the American Printing House for the Blind. I've just been reading up on the Olmsted Parks here in Louisville. It says here that they were designed in 1891, well after APH was established, by Frederick Law Olmsted. He's famous for his work on Central Park in New York City, the U.S. Capitol grounds, and the Biltmore Estate grounds. I love to come here to walk the paths and hiking trails. These parks also hold scrimmage fields, dog parks, playgrounds, fountains, and gorgeous views. The next time you visit us here in Louisville, you should come and check out the parks. I hope you guys enjoy your annual meeting.
Hello, I'm Tristan Pierce, and you're joining me in the newest attraction of Louisville, the Waterfront Botanical Gardens. I am so happy that Louisville now has a garden for the community to enjoy. Just last month, the long-awaited Beargrass Creek Pathway opened to the public. This ecological haven is just down the street from APH, less than a mile. I often come here just to get away, get into nature, and relax. Well, I guess I better let you guys go because I know you've got a lot of great sessions and events to attend. So have a great annual meeting. Bye.
There is just a little taste for you of Louisville, and we do hope to see you next year all together. But now I am going to turn it over to Mike for our archived treasures. Mike, take it away.
Okay, so for any of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Mike Hudson. I'm the Museum Director here at APH, and I reported to you last fall that we were working on bringing the American Foundation for the Blind Helen Keller Archive to APH, and we wanted to give you another update. Now, some of you were lucky enough to get a sneak peek at a few objects from the collection that AFB had been kind enough to send forward last year. What you're about to hear is basically my stump speech that I've been sharing with interested groups all summer, and will continue to refine as we move forward. You may have heard some of it before in bits and pieces. Now, if you have questions, as Leanne mentioned, just keep them to the end. In 1841, Bryce and Otis Patton decided to try and open a school for blind children here in Louisville, but they needed state support. They took a few children to the Capitol, but their demonstrations to the legislature were ineffective. In 1842, they scheduled a second demonstration, but this time they brought in a national figure, Samuel Gridley Howe from the Perkins School in Boston, and that made the impression they needed, and they got their funding. When we bring visitors into APH for our factory tour and museum, we're trying to change their minds, their attitudes, and their actions about education and literacy for students who are blind and visually impaired. When they arrive, most only know one story: the story of Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan and the water pump. Keller's story and that of her teacher is that one perfect story that makes a lasting impression. The water pump is an obvious reference to that incredible moment in the life of author and activist Helen Keller at the age of 7, when her teacher, Anne Sullivan, herself only aged 20. How do you prepare yourself for the moment in your life when at the age of 20, and after basically 20 years of being desperately poor and disabled and anonymous yourself, that moment over a brief summer with an incredible child, that you momentarily become the most famous teacher in the world? How do you prepare yourself for that? Anyway, I digress. That incredible moment in the life of author and activist Helen Keller at the age of 7, or 6 actually, when her teacher Anne Sullivan overcomes the physical isolation of Helen's deafness and blindness to teach her the concept of language. Now, to summarize, there's a little girl in Alabama. She loses both her sight and hearing to a fever in 1882. Her father, Arthur Keller, hires a graduate of the Perkins School, Anne Sullivan, who uses the most modern special education techniques to break through the child's disabilities. Now, seeing the public relations value of the success, Dr. Anagnos at the Perkins School publicizes the story, and Helen and Annie become international sensations. Helen receives a formal education. She graduates from Radcliffe in 1904 and becomes a widely read author and social activist, campaigning for women's suffrage and civil rights, and as a tireless champion of the disabled. In 1924, she and Annie go to work for the newly established American Foundation for the Blind and become its worldwide face, traveling across the globe, raising funds and championing the blind. And by the time Helen dies in 1968, she has become an icon. Keller is an inspiration to students who are blind and visually impaired and their parents to believe that they can. And Anne Sullivan, known to generations as simply teacher, is an inspiration to teachers to believe that they can. And the moment at the water pump is a moment whose clarity of purpose captures the imagination and overwhelms the fear of disability by the broader public and makes them believe that yes, against all odds, with the right tools, they can. But that brief moment at the pump is just one moment of many incredible moments in Helen Keller's amazing life. Now this year, after 3 years of negotiations, the American Foundation for the Blind, where Helen and Annie both worked from 1924 until their deaths, transferred their AFB Helen Keller Archive and the General AFB Archive to our museum here at the Printing House. AFB, after close to 100 years in New York, moved the physical headquarters of their operation to Virginia and had been looking for a landing spot for the collection, which had been in cold storage for years. Our competitors for the collection were the Smithsonian, the New York Historical Society, and Radcliffe College. You may have heard of some of them before. Now in January, Justin Gardner and I went to Long Island City and spent a week carefully packing and consolidating the collection onto 22 precious pallets. Now, little did we know at the time that we were in an unknown race with a global pandemic to get the job done before travel to New York would have been unthinkable. And since January 28th, when the collection arrived on our loading dock, I've been spending most of my time inventorying, counting, and shelving the wonderful intellectual detritus of the lives of two of the most interesting women of the 20th century. Helen and Annie and their assistant Polly Thompson traveled all over the world in their mission to educate and advocate about and for people who are blind or visually impaired. And whenever they went, they were celebrated and honored and given gifts of the most amazing variety. And when not on the road, The pair lived interesting lives, entertaining and being entertained by wealthy benefactors and inventors and celebrities and writers and poets, actors and actresses, politicians, kings and princes and princesses. And in her spare time, Helen wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote at least 11 books and countless magazine articles, speeches, and letters. Now, my favorites are not the funny jabs from Mark Twain and earnest notes from Alexander Graham Bell and dawdling all the finest people of the East Coast liberal establishment, but the countless letters she received from the little people, asking Miss Helen for just a little piece of her for themselves. The little boy in Colorado writing a book report, asking her to send him an original poem in Braille. A theater operator in Connecticut, asking for her signature on a theater program to present to his play's director. And oh, so many others that harried staff at AFB had to respond to because, you know, Miss Helen's in her 80s and cannot answer every letter individually. And no, she cannot send you a lock of her hair. And make no mistake, the Helen Keller brand is incredibly valuable. Here's a rough way to understand how the Helen Keller brand compares to that of the American Printing House for the Blind. On Facebook, the APH site has 6,291 followers. The official Helen Keller Facebook page that AFB created has 107,000. That's a factor of 17. If you type an internet search in quotes for APH, you get 173,000 results. Type in Helen Keller and you get 9,820,000. That's a factor of 56. Now, often when visitors, especially school kids and their teachers, arrive in the museum, they want to see our Helen Keller exhibit because they've been studying her at school. Before, we had 2 artifacts. And when we were creating our collecting plan a few years ago, and we did our SWOT analysis, we acknowledged that AFB, and in a smaller way, the Perkins School in Boston, owned the Helen Keller brand in such an absolute manner that it would be futile to even try to build our collection there. It belonged to them, and that's all there was. And now, it sits behind me here in our newly installed storage room, all of it. So what are we talking about? What is the collection? It is the world's largest repository of letters, speeches, press clippings, scrapbooks, photographs, architectural drawings, artifacts, and audiovisual materials related to Helen Keller, numbering to about 41,581 items and held in roughly 310 record boxes. It includes her letters to and from such notables as Alexander Graham Bell, Pearl Buck, Mark Twain, Will Rogers, Eleanor Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, Margaret Sanger, Woodrow Wilson, and many, many others. It includes scripts and screenplays of films, television programs, plays, and radio programs starring or about Helen Keller. It includes files about things named for her, including the Helen Keller Club, the Helen Keller School, Helen Keller Coin, Helen Keller Day, Helen Keller Memorial Fund, Helen Keller Memorial Hospital, Helen Keller Memorial Week, Helen Keller Rose, Helen Keller Quilt, you get the idea. It includes drafts, manuscripts, and correspondence resulting from her 11 books and countless articles and 475 speeches that Keller made between 1902 and 1961 on topics such as faith, rehabilitation, blindness prevention, birth control, philosophy, and yes, atomic energy. It includes 10 boxes of press clippings. It includes architectural plans of her homes, over 2,000 separate photographs, 23 photo albums, 25 audio recordings, and 3 films. It includes 250 artifacts, including sculptures of her hands, paintings, gifts from dignitaries all over the world, and awards. Now, over the past years, 3 or 4 or 5, the American Foundation for the Blind and their amazing archivist, Helen Selsdon, who's just wonderful, with support from the National Endowment for the Humanities and others, has worked on a miracle of their own. They have scanned and described almost every artifact, letter, and photograph in the Helen Keller Archive, and all of those are posted at their website at afb.org/Helen Keller Archive. Anyone in the world can study these things virtually for free. And I strongly encourage you to visit that website and browse through the archive and learn more about these amazing ladies and their lives. Now, I have selected a few objects from the archive to show you today. What? Oh, we have some of our friends in the background that aren't close enough to hear. They want to move a little closer. So those are sculptures of Moses, Charles, Miguel, Polly Thompson, and of course, Helen herself. And they're on one of the mobile racks that we have in our new storage facility. So I'm sitting in our new storage facility, which our facilities team, led by Terry Raymer and Jason Abity, worked miracles getting ready for us so that when the pallets came off the truck back in January, they were able to come directly into this new space. The ceilings are 14 feet high. The room is painted a beautiful bright white, and it's filled with mobile shelving. As you saw, I'm able to open and close the aisles as I need to. The shelves go all the way to the ceiling, and it gives us plenty of space to work in and store our collection. There is a framed photograph of Helen sitting right over my desk, and it's easy to imagine her leaning over my shoulder, pointing out something that I've missed. Now, in her will, Helen left her collection to AFB so that it could one day be exhibited and shared and enjoyed by the world, and we are fulfilling that wish. At some point, I'll probably add a picture of Marguerite Levine and some other AFB archivists who worked so hard to build and protect this collection. Now, I just want to share a few things with you. First is this letter. Probably typed by Helen herself on her Royal or her Remington. It's dated June 3rd, 1913 to Mr. P.W. Kirschbaum, treasurer for a group of silk industry strikers that Helen had read about in the International Socialist Review, a magazine that she subscribed to. Dear comrade, I'm sending a check to help the Patterson silk workers in their brave fight for the most elemental justice, the right to live. The accounts I have read of their self-sacrifice and indomitable courage fill me with admiration. Their cause is my cause. It is true, I am not one of the victims of wrong industrial conditions, but the weight of the burdens that the workers of the world carry lies heavy upon my heart. I feel their hunger, their privations in my eyes starved of light. I feel their bondage in my own physical dependence, and I cannot be happy while conditions exist that make childhood bitter and motherhood a sorrow. What demand could be more just, more appealing to our human instincts than that of the Patterson strikers? The demand for a fair wage and reasonable labor conditions. Strange that there should be any right-feeling human being who does not sympathize with them, who does not use every means in his power to help them in their struggle. And passing strange that there should be men who will obey orders and fire upon their brothers at the command of an officer. His eyes must indeed be dark, who does not see that there must be something very wrong when the workers, the men and women who produce the wealth of the nation, are themselves ill-paid, ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-housed. His ears must indeed be stopped who does not hear the desperation in the voice of the people crying out against cruel poverty, hunger, and the power that robs them of their children's happiness. Dull indeed is the heart of him who turns his back upon such misery and supports a system that grinds the life and soul out of men and women.
Alan Anderson, draw attention to 20, please. Helen Anderson, draw attention.
The real life of APH.
Helen could sure write, couldn't she? She was a lifelong socialist, a conviction that came directly from her own visual impairment. After she graduated from Radcliffe College in 1904, she began researching conditions affecting people who were blind in America, and what she discovered shocked her. Many people who were blind lived in crummy housing. Many had crummy jobs, if they had jobs at all, working for low wages and in horrific conditions. And what's more, so did a lot of other Americans. Americans from immigrant backgrounds in particular, or Americans with brown or black skin. And many couldn't vote, women in particular. And Helen spent the rest of her life championing those causes. And the collection is filled with articles she wrote and speeches she gave on their behalf. But if you think Helen spent all her time at the barricades, you'd be wrong. Both while she was at school and after she went to work as a fundraiser for the American Foundation for the Blind in the 1920s, she spent plenty of time hobnobbing with the rich and famous, including the very capitalists she often demonstrated against. So our next object is this undated photograph of her talking to the car maker, Henry Ford. This is a close-up photograph of Helen touching the mouth and lips of Henry Ford with her left hand. There is an unknown woman visible in the background. They're standing just outside a building. Helen is wearing a long sleeve, loose white blouse, a high-waisted skirt, and a broad brim hat with a decoration, and everyone is smiling. Helen and Annie's fame provided them with instant access to all the other thinkers and doers of her day, all the way up to world leaders, royalty, and American presidents. But she always had to walk a fine line between her activism and the support of wealthy friends whose patronage allowed her to do her chosen work. Now, not all world leaders were in love with Helen. In 1933, at the behest of German Chancellor Adolf Hitler, the German Student Union embarked upon a series of book burnings, destroying books that they deemed dangerous to German youth. And Helen's books found their way on the pyre. When she got word of it, Helen sent a telegram to Germany that was widely published in American newspapers, and the collection has a draft of it. To the student body of Germany, May 9th, 1933. History has taught you nothing if you think you can kill ideas. Tyrants have tried to do that often before, and the ideas have risen up in their might and destroyed them. You can burn my books and the books of the best minds in Europe, but the ideas in them have seeped through a million channels and will continue to quicken other minds. Do not imagine that your barbarities to the Jews are unknown here. God sleepeth not, and he will visit his judgment upon you as surely as upon the wicked kings of Judah who defied his word. Better were it for you to have a millstone hung round your neck and sink into the sea than to be hated and despised of all men. Signed, Helen Keller. Now, this is one of my favorite things in the collection, although it may seem strange to you. In her role as a world ambassador for the American Foundation for the Blind, Helen and Annie and Polly Thompson traveled all over the world. And at every stop, she was feted and celebrated and treated like royalty and left every place loaded down with gifts. And she went to Japan 3 times, and thousands of people thronged to see her as she arrived and departed. And more than any other single country, the collection is filled with gifts from the Japanese people. And this was given to her on her birthday in 1964. It is a cricket cage. It's made out of bamboo. It's probably about 12 inches long and 7 or 8 inches tall and about 5 inches deep. It has a little sliding door on the side it's decorated with beads, blue and red bead. Now, keeping crickets as pets began in China in antiquity, but had traveled to Japan long ago, and somebody thought Miss Helen might enjoy it, and they sent it to her. I don't know that it conveys tremendous significance, but I just happen to love it. Now, I'm always finding new things, like these castings. This is a bronze casting of the hand of Anne Sullivan Macy, made the year that she died in 1936 by artist Bonnie McCleary. If I have a bad day, I can touch the hands of the master teacher. That'd be a good day. And something that I just found the other day, which I just found amazing. And in the collection is a number of books, hundreds of them actually, from Helen's personal library. And there are some survivals in there that are quite interesting. This is a copy of a book of poetry called Dark Water. I'm not sure if you can see that or not in the light here. Dark Water by the civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois. And when you open the book up, inscribed carefully on the inside, it says, in both print and braille, "Very sincerely yours, W.E.B. Du Bois, 16 April 1925. I have known you, unknown, since 1890. I have known you, unknown, since 1890. I found that incredibly romantic. Here's this very interesting gentleman, very historic figure, who in his mind had known Helen even since she was a little kid. Her story had inspired him. So I guess you can imagine how excited we are about this opportunity. I know all my colleagues here at APH share my excitement. Is it going to take resources and time, energy, and capital? You bet. The collection and the Helen Keller brand that it represents is going to give us a tremendous public relations boost. For almost her entire life, Helen Keller was the thought leader that propelled the field, and we become the beneficiary of all her hard work. Now, I think that the underlying reason that APH opened its museum in 1994 was this vague feeling that our history was being lost, that things were being thrown away that ought not to be thrown away, that young teachers and young specialists were growing up not knowing the roots of the profession, that they were forgetting the struggles that the pioneers went through to get the field recognized, to create standards, to create training curriculum, to earn government support, and that the general public were generally ignorant about what it meant to be blind, how people that are blind live their lives and put their pants on in the morning, one leg at a time, and brush their teeth all by themselves, and read books, and do what they want, when they want. And that people that are blind themselves don't always know their own history, don't know about the struggles of their grandparents and parents for the basic rights to get an education and hold down a job. I mean, I have that vague feeling myself sometimes about the younger generation. So they didn't have it as hard as I did, honey, let me tell you. But I also think that history can be inspiring and informational in our everyday lives. And of course I think that way, right? It's my job. But think about your own first day on the job, armed maybe with a piece of paper from a fancy school and nothing else. Can you tell me that having a role model like Anne Sullivan, knowing that she persevered through the challenges and succeeded beyond her wildest imaginings, can you tell me that that does not give you some confidence? Here we have just a beautiful little carte de visite of a very young Anne Sullivan from her 20s. Can you imagine how she felt stepping off that train in the wilds of Alabama, armed only with a high school education, so far away from everything she ever knew, her poor eyes aching, only weeks removed from her most recent eye surgery, straining to understand the strange accents and make herself and her Boston Irish known and understood, and to hide the fact from these ex-Confederate gentry that her immigrant father was so destitute that he had left her and her brother at the almshouse. And when she arrived at the Perkins School for the Blind, her dress, her hose, her shoes had been provided to her by the fallen women from that same almshouse and were the only things she owned in the world. And if she failed to work a miracle for Mr. and Mrs. Keller, she was going to lose her position and end up where? And you sit there with your college degree and your unemployment insurance and your Social Security and your city buses and your Uber and your internet packed with information right at your fingertips and your cell phone and all that. And the story of Anne Sullivan doesn't give you confidence that you can make it. And how fragile memory is, right? I'm 56. I find that I remember less and less, and there just isn't any room up there left in the end. So if somebody doesn't tuck it in a file and label it and make sure it doesn't go out on the porch for the trash man when Aunt Viv passes, well, maybe nobody is left to remember it and write it down, and then Aunt Viv is just gone. So what are we going to do with these incredible stories? We are going to build something entirely new. New exhibits, new storage, new research rooms, new education spaces, new websites, new online resources, new directions. Right now, everything is on the table. And over the next few years, we will definitely be looking for partners to join us on this wonderful adventure. Because that's what Helen said, right? Life is either an adventure or nothing at all. Helen Keller was a hero to the blind and visually impaired, a hero to the deaf, a hero to women, a hero to civil rights, a hero to labor, and a hero that we sorely need yesterday and today. And we look forward to the task of telling her story at the American Printing House for the Blind. Thank you all much for your time this morning. And Leanne, I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, this is your time. Again, you have Mike as a captive audience. So right now they are thoroughly telling you outstanding and thank you for your beautiful spirit. And you are a treasure and an inspiration, Mike. So just realize that you have people who are letting you know that we are so blessed to have you in our field and telling us our own history in our own place.
Well, they do actually pay me to do this, you know. So.
Your first question is, what is your most treasured find in this collection?
Well, I think I've shared them with you this morning. I really think that autographed book from W.E.B. Du Bois, we still are actually learning about Helen's connections to the civil rights movement. We know that she supported the civil rights movement. She belonged to the NAACP. But like Deborah Kendrick, who's this wonderful writer from Cincinnati, I did a presentation for ACB a few months ago, and she wanted to know, did Helen have any close African-American friends? And so we're still like researching that to see, you know, how were those relations? How did they develop? You know, what do they look like? And so we need to know more. We know that, you know, Helen was active in all these things, but we still need to study that a lot more and learn more about that. And so when I found that, I mean, just a chill went up and down my spine. I mean, I have known you unknown since 1890. I just find that so amazing. But you know, her graduation robes from her degrees, many of her awards, her diplomas, and then the speeches. It's you know, it's in Helen's words that so much power is communicated, and I find something new every day. That's my new favorite thing.
Is this something that eventually a person who is blind that would be able to come and actually touch some of this? And you might want to tell a little bit about the one award you explained to us early on.
Well, my answer to that would be that first off, this collection is on loan from the American Foundation for the Blind. We do not own it. And so we would be extremely careful about how we would deal with the collection, okay? Having said that, it is clear from looking at Helen's copy of her 1955 Oscar that every Tom, Dick, and Harry that came to AFB between 1955 and and last year probably got to touch it, because the Oscars took us is all the plating is worn off of it. In general in our museum, we divide our collection into 3 categories. The first category is allowed to be touched by anybody. The second category is allowed to be touched by people who are blind or visually impaired. And then the third category is something so rare that it can't be touched. So when we create the museum that will highlight all of these items, we will always be looking for ways that people who do not use sight as their primary sense can interact with and enjoy the object. But when you go to, say, for instance, Liberty Hall, the Liberty Bell is there. You don't expect to be able to touch the Liberty Bell, because the Liberty Bell is a one-of-a-kind thing, and there will never be another Liberty Bell, right? And so I would hope that we would have touching opportunities for things that are duplicated. Some of the original things and sculptures may be able to be touched. We haven't made those decisions yet, but we are always thinking of how to make things accessible. You know, a museum gives interactions with authentic things, with real things. That's why you go to a museum. That's why you go to a historic site, because things happened at that site, or that object was there when history was made. And we, as museum people, need to work with our audiences to make sure that everybody has a fair chance to interact with real things and have real experiences.
Emily Coleman.
Hi, Mike. It's Emily Coleman from the Texas School for the Blind.
Hi, Emily.
And, you and I have chatted a few times, but listening to you, I think you're aware that most of our historic schools have museums of our own or collections. Most of us would be quick to admit that they need help. So I'm wondering if, as you're working towards creating a bigger and better APH museum, if there's the possibility at some point to do some consultation or outreach with our collections, whether it's coming out, helping us with displays, and maybe even, who knows, if it could be a great partnership to have like satellite museums around the country that we did in collaboration with APH, because you're like the guru. So I think that would be awesome. Just throwing it out there.
Well, let me just say that I love coming to the historic residential schools. I will come at a drop of a hat. As soon as we're in a public health situation where we can travel again. If you all want to invite me to come out to Texas, I would. I've been lucky to come out, and Bill Dougherty hosted me there when we brought our traveling exhibit, which is about Helen Keller, Child in a Strange Country. And I've gotten to go to Illinois and Maryland and Nebraska, and I love. I'll be willing to consult on anything with anybody about working to preserve your collections and then also share them. Sure, I'd love to come. All you gotta do is ask.
Okay, well, it's an open invitation, but I'll remind you when we're not in a public health crisis.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, the next one person is saying that at one time they went to a car museum and they were given a cloth pair of gloves to wear and wondered if that might be possible to touch things like these.
Yeah, and you'll notice that I'm wearing my nitrile gloves, but that we do that to keep finger oils from getting on things. It's not as good as touching it with your bare hands, but there's absolutely, it would be weird, we say at our museum, if you would come to a museum filled with things that were designed to be used by touch and no one got to touch them, right? It's just that, there are some things that it's just like we have the rare copy of Louis Braille's first publication of the Braille Code, the 1829 Crusade. We made a reproduction of that page, so you can touch the reproduction, but you're not allowed to touch the original. But there's always those compromises. But access it's very important to us.
So besides visiting now the Kentucky School for the Blind too, so you must walk next door, I guess, to help them with their collection. What is your average amount of visitors per year minus the pandemic?
We usually get about 7,000 people in the museum. And then our traveling exhibit and our programs go to many thousands more. But we get about 7,000 people who come through. And of course, when you come to the museum, you want to go on a factory tour. It's just the fun. It's fun. It's a great part of the tour.
Do you have any suggestions for how to celebrate Helen Keller's birthday with new certified Braille transcribers so that they can learn about our rich history?
Well, bear in mind that all of these speeches and documents, well, not all, but 99% of them have been scanned in and are available and they're transcribed. Now they're OCR'd, so the transcriptions are imperfect if the handwriting or the print is not clear, but they're all there at at AFB's website, Helen Keller Archive. And, I think assigning some readings from there would help people to understand her life as an adult so much better. The thing is that, William Gibson's play, The Miracle Worker, and subsequent movies have frozen Helen as a little girl. And that actually it's not all Gibson's fault. I've seen newspaper articles from the 1930s when Helen was in her 50s. And say she's coming to Kansas City, and the headline says, "Famous blind girl comes to Kansas City." She's 55, but they want to freeze her as a little girl, as that pure little girl with her hand underneath the water and the loving teacher leaning over and the miracle moment occurring, right? And then Helen grows up to be a woman with her own opinions, and those opinions are not always things that people like that people like. There's plenty of things to look in Helen's speeches that if you're in a position of power, you might feel threatened by what she says. And we don't always want our kids to grow up to be independent adults and have their own ideas, separate from our own. But Helen does that. And so I think that one thing that I would urge your transcriber group to do would be to read her writings. Read her writings. Maybe have a book club. And everybody read it, and then you all sit down and you all decide whether or not you like those things. Because here's the thing: somebody has to stand up for us. Somebody has to be willing to say the things that no one else will say. Helen was willing to say that. What are those things in your life that you feel strongly about? They're going to be different from what Helen believed in, but we in our American democracy have to be able to stand up for the things that we believe. And Helen is a model of that kind of behavior, that kind of courage.
So you now also have to go to Overbrook and New Mexico. You're going to be traveling when this pandemic lifts.
Overbrook is on my absolute #1 wish list. The school in Philadelphia is doing so much early printing before anybody else is. There's a fellow there named Napoleon Nice Jr., who's a blind guy himself, and who's doing very early tactile printing there. Philadelphia they need to do some work at Overbrook.
So I have a question. What is the camera significance behind you?
The camera just happens to be sitting there. Everything gets photographed. Everything gets documented. Everything gets measured. We do condition reports on everything. It just happened to be laying there. I didn't actually intentionally mean to leave it there.
Oh, that's okay. That's a part of what
you
you're doing
the
for the
collection.
collection.
We don't allow any pens. We only use pencils. So it's just kind of part of best practice.
Okay, if you have a question, you can raise your hand if you want to do it by voice, or you can type it in the chat. If I missed one, I apologize. Please type it again. They are appreciating your descriptions and the information. Someone made a suggestion of using a 3D printer, maybe to replicate some of the items to touch.
Yeah, I think that we've only entered the beginning of the way 3D printers are going to be used in museums, but also in education in general. And you know, the day is coming when there will just be an online archive, if you want to think of it, of templates for 3D printing things. I think that. I mean, think about that. With that, you don't even need to come to Louisville. You could be in Timbuktu, and if you had a printer, you could print out, you know, a replica of Anne Sullivan Macy's hand and touch it. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be great. Paul, you can speak.
Hey, Mike. So I've always thought that the telegram that was written, that she wrote in 1933, was just incredibly, showed incredible foresight, and so many other people were denying what was happening. And likewise, her comments to industrialists of the day. I've never looked at this, but I know she corresponded with and met most of the US presidents in her lifetime. Are there any records of a letter or an effort to push any of the US presidents, or was it mostly, I mean, mostly what I've seen, it seems a little bit more like it's, you know, just kind of niceties.
Well, she definitely, I mean, the answer is yes. Okay. And if you're interested, Paul, you can go to that, again, afp.org/Helen Keller Archive, type in John F. Kennedy, and a whole slew of documents will come up that you can read right there from your computer. But one good example of she was an unwilling partner initially with AFB in terms of talking books. Of course, she was deaf herself, and so talking books were not going to help her much. But eventually, Robert Irwin, the head of AFB, convinced her to become an advocate for it, and she wrote President Roosevelt urging him to support talking books with the WPA, and eventually Roosevelt gave in and did just that. But she met personally, I think, every president from Calvin Coolidge. Well, you know, she met some earlier, but I know unbroken, I think, Calvin Coolidge on forward until Lyndon Johnson gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So, yeah, but I haven't actually, Paul, to tell you the truth, I haven't, beyond that knowledge of her lobbying Roosevelt, I haven't actually looked at any of that other stuff, but I did want to.
And I'm gonna go do that, because shame on me. I mean, I was at AFB when we were getting the support from the archives.
It's all there. So it's incredible. And so you can spend a lot of time down the rabbit hole kind of pursuing that. But I recommend that. You'll find out that I bet she did poke, prod, and drag every president in some way, shape, or form.
Well, you're bringing this to life so well, and I know Helen Selston would agree too, who you credited, of course, with her work. She is such an amazing marvelous archivist.
Yeah, Helen Selston, the archivist at AFB. And by the way, she's still there. She's still working, and she's amazing.
So, how secure is that location?
I cannot tell you anything about the security. I can tell you nothing. All I can say is it is secure.
There you go. What is the common question students ask when they visit the APH museum?
Well, remember that for most of our listeners here, you're either in the blindness field, perhaps you're blind or visually impaired yourself, and you know that in general, the broad public, which makes up probably 94% of our visitation here. They're just people walking off the street. They're fascinated by what we're doing, but they don't know skip about blindness. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, we teach them how to write their name in Braille on a Braille writer. We teach them about, you know, the transition between raised letters. And then we talk about various education, math, science. So that the very most basic thing, that blindness is not a curse, that, you know, forces you to, you know, sell pencils on the street for the rest of your life. I think that's the most common thing. Just the most basic things about blindness, like what's possible, what is possible, and that lots of things are possible.
Do you have any pieces or archives about Helen's deafness in your collection?
Tons. This Helen Keller Archive is full of things about her deafness. It's just that because Helen worked for AFB from 1924 till her death, she became much more identified with blindness, because that was what she was being paid to do. It was her job to go out and raise money for AFB. But yeah, there's a tremendous amount of stuff in the archives about deaf and hard of hearing, and where Helen fits in the chronology, because it's a really complicated thing, and I want to work more on that. But see, Helen is aligned with Alexander Graham Bell, who was an oralist. Okay, these are a group of people who believe that blind people should learn. Deaf people and hard of hearing should learn to read people's lips and learn to speak themselves. And Helen did that. But there's an entire, much more powerful, politically strong group of people in the deaf and hard of hearing community who are into American Sign Language. And Helen never learned American Sign Language, although she used the manual alphabet. That's how Annie was communicating to her. So there's a lot of issues, interesting issues about where Helen fits as a deaf person. And deaf blind people, they're in their own little group, their own little subcategory. They don't, Helen primarily identifies as a blind person, but she is profoundly deaf. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I should have shared something with you today.
So you have shared your favorite parts. What is one of the stranger items in the collection?
Well, there's a lot of hate mail that you all think of. We love Helen, right? We love her. I love her. I love Anne, incredible American women. But there's a lot of people that didn't like Helen, and they write nasty letters to her. Anybody who's ever worked in development knows that sooner or later, you're going to get somebody who's going to get tired of receiving your mail, or they've decided that something you said made them mad, so now they're not going to donate money anymore, right? And so there's a lot of hate mail in there. I think the cricket cage is pretty strange. There's also a boomerang. She went to Australia and they gave her a boomerang, and yeah. So, and then there's a number of things from Japan that we have not had translated. And I look forward to working. We've got a really great place here in the Asia Institute here in Louisville. I look forward to working with them to get some of that translated.
Okay, one last question before I let everyone go. Was Helen active in the deaf community?
I would say.
Have you found anything?
I would say that I don't know. I think that's the best answer, to say that. Right now, I don't know. I need to learn more about that. Certainly, she identified with people who are deaf and hard of hearing. She spoke about being deaf and hard of hearing. And I know that she was involved with some deaf and hard of hearing organizations, but I don't know enough about it to speak knowledgeably. So I need to learn more.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, Mike. This has been fabulous. These are definitely people I read about and can remember reading about in the 4th grade, which kind of got me going in my own career. So thank you. Thank you. This was a fabulous walk through those archive treasures that you have.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.
If you're listening for the closing code is history. And I hope you learned some history. Your closing code is history. Outstanding performance, Mike. Lots of thank yous. You will probably be called to do a lot more. Goodbye, all. Get ready to go to Information Fair.